What's good, everyone? This is Micro here, and today I want to give you my advanced guide on how you should be playing Magneto in Season 0 of Marvel Rivals. Now, I did my pre-launch guide on how you can play Magneto before the game launches, gave you my ideas on what he would be like, my tips and tricks on basic map layout. This video ain't gonna be that. If you want to understand like the basic abilities of Magneto and the basic layouts on how you can play with him, you can check out my last YouTube video on a more in-depth detail. In summary, he's a really good bully for close and mid-range with most of his abilities. With his team-up ability with Scarlet Witch, he does gain an ability to wield his metallic sword that does long range, and it doesn't seem to fall off in terms of damage, which makes it exceptionally good for poking enemies far away, such as Hawkeye, Black Widow, or any supports that you can try to get in the back line while remaining in the front line, soaking up all the damage. That's the TLDR of his basic kit, but for today's video I want to go over the advanced guide on how I've been playing Magneto and how I've been seeing much success, in the both, quick matches, but especially in competitive rank, but also my tips and tricks on how to deal with certain matchups against heroes that definitely counters Magneto's kit. But before we go into any details about the advanced guide, I just want to give you my personal thoughts and just a short personal rant about Magneto. I definitely love Magneto and his kit as being a Vanguard in Marvel Rivals. The only caveat I have about this guy is I strongly feel like his playstyle is heavily determined by the fact if your teammate is a Scarlet Witch or not. Simply because he doesn't have that much long range capabilities, therefore it's very hard for someone like him to poke and peel off, support characters who are far away, or even snipers, if he doesn't have that team up chaotic sword. He has to resort to his mag cannon, which you can only fire off one good mag cannon, once every 13 seconds or sooner, depending on how much damage you can soak up with his iron bulwark. But other than that, he's definitely a really good Vanguard to bully against other people up front, in the front of the lines, more so against other tanks or other, brawler DPS heroes like Iron Fist, Wolverine, or even Spider-Man. That's my honest rant and opinion about the offensive capabilities of Magneto, but in terms of whether or not he can just play his role as a standard Vanguard tank, he does that very well. He definitely has, a couple abilities, to not only safeguard himself from damage, but he can also bubble his allies who are either low on health, and you can bubble them until they can get to safety, or you can bubble your dive tanks or dive DPS heroes, so that they can stay protected for when they, dive into the enemy lines and either, do their combos or they unleash their own. He definitely does a good job of keeping the teammates alive with those type of bubble abilities, or, if you anticipate an ult incoming from either Iron Man or anybody who has a projectile base, he can just throw up his giant shield. It doesn't have a health bar, so it's very easy to just, block a lot of damage without worrying about your shield depleting. The only caveat is it has a short timer to hold the shield up, so you gotta time it well. Plus, on top of that, it does go on a little bit of a cooldown for the shield to recharge. So that's the only thing you have to keep in mind for someone like Magneto. Even though the game, labeled Magneto as a 2-star difficulty guy, I do agree with that. However, my personal intake about this guy, his mentality gameplay is definitely a 4-star, because even though he is slow for a Vanguard, there's a lot of things that you need to keep an eye on, both on your teammates and the enemy's team in terms of movement or any type of ults that might come your way, while also maintaining your own health, because you are slow. Even though you have ways to guard against a lot of damage, once you start getting low on health, you're pretty much a sitting duck because you're slow. You can't get out of dodge fast enough to seek assistance. So you need to make sure that you have map awareness of whether or not you have a support character nearby you to heal you when you're low, or if you're nearby a health pack so you can quickly retreat to a health pack, regain some health, recuperate a little bit, and then get back into the fray. So map awareness definitely does come into play in terms of the mentality difficulty of Magneto. But that is my personal rant about Magneto. Overall, I still love him as a Vanguard. I'm still going to main him as my main tank in competitive matches. But without further ado, I definitely want to dive into the advanced guide on how you can best improve your gameplay as Magneto, both competitively and in quick play, but just personal improvement as well in Season 0 of Marvel Rivals. To start things off, let's talk about Magneto's in-depth application on his skill set and how I use all of his skills during gameplay, whether it's initiating team fights, saving my allies, or just doing damage by myself. His primary fire, Iron Volley, is really his main bread and butter to poke people mid-range. It doesn't go that far. I think the max range is about 25 meters. Plus, on top of that, it does have a splash damage capability. So the max damage you can do to an enemy using Iron Volley is roughly about 75. And that's including the 30 damage initial impact plus the 40 damage of splash, which gives you 75. However, if you're going against fast heroes such as Black Panther or Venom or Iron Fist, who moves around a lot, it's kind of hard to get the direct hits. So I just basically, aim my Iron Volleys closer to the ground, because I'm not more or less trying to hit the direct impact for the 70 damage. I'm trying to, whittle them down using the splash damage. And because I'm a tank, I can take a lot of hits to splash them down to the point to force them to retreat, or have one of my other teammates come and pick them off if they are trying to get too greedy. If we're going to talk about his ultimate, Meteor M, his ultimate is more of a defensive ult that best saves your teammates from heavy suppressive fire. If the enemy team is, pushing hard into either your guys' space or pushing hard into an objective that you're also trying to push, his Meteor M soaks up to 800, worth of damage, for you and your allies. As long as any projectile is within the bubble, he is able to pick those up. But keep in mind though, as soon as it goes over 800, it will self-destruct. You won't get hit, but more than likely, if you're not nearby any enemies, they won't get hit by the meteor as well. Therefore, even though his ultimate is definitely good for defensive capabilities, do keep in mind on the number below your rectal, because that shows the percentage of how much damage you are absorbing, and once it gets close to 100% or 800 damage, then it will self-destruct. It's best to either A, chuck out your meteor shortly before the time runs out for max damage, or if you are soaking up a lot of damage in a short amount of time, just chuck the meteor once you get closer to the 60 to 80 percentile range, because when you're in team fights and everything is very chaotic, it's hard to really time it when it gets close to the 90 percentile marker. So don't get too greedy to have your ultimate to be very strong to kind of wipe the whole team that way. You just want the ultimate to soak up some damage and still, chuck the meteor at the enemy team to cripple them, so that you or your teammates could come in and pick off the kills. So you'll still get assist kills and you're still doing your part as Vanguard. At least that's how I use my ultimate, during team fights and during my competitive play when I do play Magneto. Now, when we come to Metallic Curtain, it's pretty straightforward. It's really a type of shield that works on a timer base instead of HP base. So instead of you worrying about the HP of your shield when you're guarding your allies, you only got to worry about that when you time of using the Metallic Curtain to either ward off ultimates from the enemy team, or just ward off, some heavy suppressive fire that, the enemy team is either pushing really hard using all their cooldowns and abilities, or, if you're within a chokehold point and you just really need to get you and your teammates out of that chokehold into, more open space. And then his bread and butter ability that you would use most often is his Mag Cannon. His Mag Cannon does quite a bit of damage, once it hits full stacks. And the main thing that makes the Mag Cannon very great for Magneto is the fact that it doesn't have no fallout damage, which means it's one of the only moves that Magneto can possess without Scarlet Witch that you can bully and poke, units that are far away. And the fact that it has no fallout damage, that's a definite plus because, if you're battling or dueling somebody, and they're trying to retreat backwards, if your primary fire, Iron Volley, is just, a little bit too short to, hit them, you can just proc off the mag cannon and you can still, bully the enemy that way to either pick off a kill, before they retreat, or just cripple them further so it'll take them longer to kind of heal themselves back up and get back into the fight. I do this all the time when I'm, up front, either by myself as a Vanguard or I'm partnered up with another teammate Vanguard, is I try to use my mag cannon as much as possible to, bully the front line as much as I can to do as much damage. Now, I talked about a basic map layout on how you should position Magneto before the game dropped, and basically in my last video I talked about you having Magneto up in the front lines because, as I mentioned before, he is such a great tank to just soak up a whole bunch of damage, simply because his skill set allows him to cycle through his abilities to continuously either shielding himself to soak a lot of damage, or he can proc his own shield to guard against ults and any other heavy suppressive fire, against yourself or your allies, until for a short amount of time before your shield ends. However, depending on which map you play, it definitely determines on how often you're able to stay in the front lines as Magneto and how quickly you have to bounce around between, objective points. Or it definitely determines how quickly you need to bounce around different chokehold points when you're doing a control map. One thing I've learned about Magneto during my competitive matches recently is that he definitely shines well with maps that has a lot of chokehold points or a lot of corners, such as the Tokyo 2099 maps where there's a lot of buildings involved, simply because because the fact that he is slow, he has a lot of ground to maneuver between buildings and walls in Tokyo 2099, so that you're not out in the open a whole lot. Yes, even though you are a Vanguard and it is your main job to soak up a lot of damage for yourself and your teammates, if you are low on health, you don't have any ability to get out of the battlefield quickly. Therefore, you either A, need to take cover before the enemy can pick you off, and B, you can quickly take cover behind a wall or inside a building that has a med pack, and you can easily walk back out into the fight relatively safe because you have abilities to either bubble yourself, or you can throw your shield while you're walking out so you're not getting flanked really easily, or if they have a sniper, they can't snipe you very easily as soon as you step out of the doorway. Another map that he tends to excel in is the Hydra base map, simply because even though you're only playing control maps on the Hydra base, the maps are relatively within confined space areas. Regardless of which part of the Hydra base map you're playing on, you're not in an open field. Therefore, it's still easy to shield yourself and your allies, but if you need to get out of the fight relatively quickly, you can easily retreat behind a wall or a corridor, and you can safely maneuver to a med pack to heal yourself back up, or you can safely maneuver to one of your support allies to heal yourself. These are the two types of maps that I tend to have the best times playing as Magneto with. On the flip side, the type of maps that Magneto tends to struggle with quite a bit are the open-ended maps, such as the Clintar Assault maps, because when you start the match, you start out playing in the open field before you kind of get to that circular area to fight for control or defend your control point. That open-end space is pretty much bad news for Magneto, simply because he is slow. So therefore, it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get from the starting point all the way to the chokehold point, if you're attacking. But if you're defending, it's a little bit better because you can easily just stay inside that circular area. However, if your dive tanks or your dive DPS heroes are having trouble flanking the enemy heroes in the open-ended space, it'll be hard for you to protect yourself and protect them at the same time if you venture outside of that circular area. Therefore, you can kind of find yourself stuck between a rock and a hard place, deciding whether or not you want to sacrifice your own life going to the open space and try to protect your dive tanks and dive DPS heroes, or cut your losses and have them die but stay behind the chokehold point and wait for the enemy team to come and push against you. Another bad thing when it comes to open-ended maps is snipers have a better time picking off heroes who are either slow or big in open-ended maps such as Hawkeye and Black Widow. Those would be Magneto's greatest adversaries on those type of maps, because even though he can shield himself to resist 1 to 2 headshots, as soon as his bubble shield ends, he'll be vulnerable. And if you don't have your shield up because it's on cooldown, you're still going to be vulnerable. And because you're slow, it's very easy for any one of those snipers to pick you up after a couple of more headshots. Now the next part I want to talk about is basic combos and certain techniques that you can use when you're playing as Magneto. Now I'm not the type of player that likes to spend a lot of time of like certain tech that you can quickly break out of, you know, certain animations and cancellations when it comes to hero shooting. I only focus on that on fighting games, but not hero shooting. But that being said, there are combos that you can use when you play as Magneto to either do some high burst damage or quickly, you know, swap between using your primary fire to either swapping to bubbling yourself, bubbling an ally, or swapping to your shield. My basic bread and butter combo I like to do is Iron Volley followed by Mag Cannon, and he can execute those moves really fast, especially for a tank, which does kind of resort in some high damage capabilities. Now you can't 2-tap a squishy hero if they have full health. However, during team fights, there's going to be good chances that you're going to be bullying down those squishy heroes during team fights. So it's really easy that if you find a squishy hero, like for instance an Iron Fist, who is close to half health, you can easily, you know, proc an Iron Volley. Even if you do some splash damage, then you can immediately hit him with the Mag Cannon, and that would be a definite secured kill combo that you can do for Magneto.
I feel like myself again. I wish I could say I was sure. Beware my might.
Another way you can use this combo is that you can hit one enemy with Iron Volley, but if you see another enemy who's lower health is trying to retreat, you can immediately, you know, move your cursor on them and proc the Mag Cannon. And because he can execute the Mag Cannon relatively quickly after his Iron Volley, there's a good enough chance that you can easily pick off that kill as well, which I have done quite a few times playing as Magneto, both in competitive and quick play matches. I know that there are other Vanguard heroes that has a lot more combos, but for Magneto, this is the type of combo that is sufficient enough to kind of get the job done. You're really there to be a bully. You're not there to do a whole lot of damage in a short time frame, but you also don't smack people with a wet noodle either. You can do damage yourself, but it just comes in spurts. Now, if you do have the Metallic Fusion, then another combo that I could suggest you can do too is you can start this combo off by one, casting your Metal Bulwark on yourself. If you're gonna go all out and be highly aggressive, you can bubble yourself and then immediately proc Metallic Fusion, and then you can start moving forward to the enemy team, and because you can get at least 12 to 13 shots during the time frame of metallic fusion, and each projectile that you can hit with metallic fusion does 85 damage, and it doesn't fall off either the farther it goes. Now, if you are fighting any melee heroes or within close range, you can do this third combo ability to make it somewhat easier to land your hits a lot better. And this combo is starting off by going Iron Volley, followed up with a melee attack. One thing about Magneto is his melee ability, he does use his metallic sword. It doesn't hit as much as metallic fusion, but it has a large hitbox range. What that means is that you can use your Iron Volley to either land a direct hit on the melee hero, and then if you quickly hit your melee ability, it'll execute relatively quickly, plus the fact that it has a large hitbox, it makes it that much easier to land that melee hit as well. Now again, this will not 2-tap any squishy heroes unless they're already low on health, but it will be enough to make a significant impact during that initial duel, and you can just repeat the process. Go from Iron Volley to melee, Iron Volley to melee. Now, because of his skill set and the type of combos you can implement as Magneto, there are definitely some heroes that you can easily counter when you play as Magneto. On the flip side, there are also heroes that can counter you if you are playing as Magneto as well. Now, the type of heroes that you can easily counter are heroes that are either mid to long range heroes that uses projectiles, or any heroes that use projectiles for that matter, simply because one, his shield blocks any and all projectiles except for Hawkeye's Storm Arrow. That's the only ability that can pierce through shields, but other than that ability, every other type of projectile can be considered blocked by Magneto's shield, or your Iron Bulwark bubble can easily soak up a lot of the projectile damage coming from the enemy team as well. That would mean heroes like Iron Man, Moon Knight, Namor, Penny Parker, or even Rocket Raccoon, just to name a few, are definitely heroes that you can easily counter because you can soak up so much damage for yourself, or you can bubble your allies if they're trying to take them down with your Iron Bulwark. And you can use your Metallic Current to soak up any type of ultimates or projectiles that are enhanced, like, through Rocket Raccoon's ultimate or Storm's passive ability. However, the type of heroes that easily counters Magneto in this game are any type of brawler heroes, period. That is simply because his shield does not guard against any melee attacks, and that's even including Moon Knight's ultimate. Because even though it looks like Khonshu's hands is considered projectiles, even if you aim your shield upward, you still take full damage from his ultimate and you can easily die. Moreover, that means that any type of melee hero such as Wolverine, Spider-Man, or Venom, and even Thor are melee heroes that can easily counter them if they get too close, because your bubble can only soak up so much damage, which the brawler heroes can easily dish out relatively quickly, and if you're running low on health, your shield can't help you either. And on top of that, because Magneto is slow, if you are within close proximity with a brawler hero, you're at a severe disadvantage simply because you can't get out of that fight relatively easy. Now, the one thing about this game that seems really good is that it definitely breeds a lot of different types of team synergies that you can bring into a particular match, excluding the team matchups that they give you. With that being said, here are some team synergies that I found to prove to be very useful if you are playing with Magneto. One type of team synergy that works well is pairing Magneto with any type of CC hero that has an ultimate that provides a huge team-wide CC. That would be the likes of Groot or the likes of Doctor Strange. Simply because with Doctor Strange and Groot, and especially with Groot can use his ultimate to, cluster all of the enemies into a small little area, and then you can pair it off with your ultimate as well, Meteor M. And because Meteor M has a large AoE splash damage, you can easily chuck the meteor directly at the center of Groot's ultimate, and there's a very high chance that you can either A, get a lot of kills against squishy heroes, or if you build your meteor long enough, you can do the maximum impact and do a potential team wipe. When it comes to Doctor Strange's ultimate lasts for 3 seconds, and 3 seconds is more than enough time for you to proc your ult and chuck it at a designated area that could target a lot of enemy heroes at one time. Even if you chuck it at a ground, just the splash damage alone would be more than enough to cripple the enemy team to either pick off any kills of any low health enemies, or you can directly hit it against someone for an instant kill, and anybody else could be crippled by the splash damage in the meantime. Now, with that being said, in terms of team synergy, my recommendation for a quote-unquote meta comp recommendation playstyle, if you want to main as Magneto for competitive matches or even in tournaments, my highest recommendation is to pair Magneto in a team matchup that has a composition of at least 2 vanguards and either 2 duelists or 3 duelists and 1 healer, if you really want to take that high risk, high reward type of playstyle. I tend to find those matchups very easy to win matches with, simply because Magneto does soak up a lot of damage, and he can even protect his own Vanguard ally from incoming damage as well through his metal bulwark, which in turn charges up your mag cannon a lot faster, which then allows you to deal more damage even as a Vanguard and bully the front line with ease. However, there is some times where, if you are forced to be the only Vanguard in your team, you can still play as Magneto and win matches being the only Vanguard. It just means that regardless if you have a Scarlet Witch or not on your team, you definitely need to play more defensively, because your team is relying on you to soak up as much damage as possible. Therefore, your mentality mindset is that you need to be the defensive team player and just protect yourself and your allies at all costs, no matter what, so that they can do their job of either keeping your team alive as supports, or dealing as much damage as they can as DPS heroes, and then you can reap the rewards of blocking the most damage. Overall, I really do enjoy Magneto's kit in Season 0 of Marvel Rivals. I do have a lot of fun playing him in competitive matches, even though unfortunately a lot of the matches I have been playing has been forcing my hand to either play a healer, because a lot of my teammates aren't wanting to play healers a whole lot, but I'm still climbing the ranks as much as I can, and any opportunity that I can find to play as Magneto, I am definitely taking those opportunities, play those competitive matches as Magneto, because I'm having so much fun with him even right now in Season 0. And because this is Season 0 and he has only 1 team up ability with Scarlet Witch, I'm definitely curious and excited to see what other team up abilities he might have with future characters that might get released later on down the pipeline. And the more time that goes by, I'm definitely curious to see how Marvel Rivals will mature through all the patch updates and everything, and to see how Magneto himself will definitely either get buffed or nerfed as the seasons go by. But if you definitely like this type of advanced guide video, don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment for this particular video especially, because I definitely would be updating my advanced guides for each season that does go by, because each season would bring new patch updates, and each patch update would bring new analysis on how you can best play Magneto during each season update. Therefore, each season I will definitely strive to improve my quality of giving you guys the best tips and tricks on how you can best maximize your playability as Magneto, either being the only Vanguard of your team, soaking up the most damage and getting MVP for being the team defender, or being the biggest bully as you can be through the power of magnetism, and just bully the front line and all the squishy heroes. So if you like these type of videos, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment, because I definitely do take these feedback very seriously, and I definitely want to improve my YouTube channel in the coming months, and the feedback you guys would give me would definitely help me give some insight on how I can improve my channel going forward. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you later.
Much fear, Magneto! Homo superior reigns supreme.
Second chances.